It's 24 hours since Villa made history and gave Pep Guardiola the biggest statistical battering of his career in a 1-0 win at Villa Park. And it sets it up very nicely for a top-of-the-table clash with Arsenal this Saturday. Today, I'm joined by AVFC London Lions chairman Paul Webb, who was at the game. Good to have you back, Webbo.
Thanks, Frankie. Yeah, what a day to be a Villa fan, mate. This is like just the dreamland at the moment, mate.
It is the best I think I've ever felt. Let's cut to the chase. You were at Villa Park last night. Is that the best performance you've ever seen from an Aston Villa team?
Yes, in short. Maybe once the euphoria dies down and you review it, and there's probably a 2 or 3 that you can link to. But I think you've hit the nail on the head. The actual result wasn't that impressive. On paper, it's a 1-0 win against Man City. That in itself isn't impressive, but the manner of performance, the levels the team and some of those individuals reached, I genuinely haven't seen at Villa Park. I look back to the O'Neill days, which is probably the only chance that maybe in our lifetime we reached such heights. And I remember everybody saying about O'Neill, we were a 60-minute team or we were a one-half team. Last night, from the first minute all the way to the last, we dominated. We were sensational. It's like they had 2 chances. This is treble winning Man City had 2 chances. And the rest of the game, we were just in complete control. And some of the play was just sensational. It wasn't fluky. It wasn't we were defending gung-ho and then counter. We absolutely dominated it. So and that's why it feels like now is a different type of excitement, because we've had big results in the past and you get excited by the result. I'm now genuinely excited because there's a team there that I saw last night reach levels that I didn't think they were possible of. And the team should be around for years to come.
Yes.
So if those are their levels today, what else can they reach? Like, that was a huge performance, Frankie. It was so fun.
It was absolutely unbelievable. I was gutted I wasn't there, to be honest. But normally when you think of like big results in the past, or if somebody beats a Man City, it's always that, they'll get the goal in the 75th minute, go ahead, and City then just pin you back, and it's just back to the walls, and you're kicking the ball off the line in the 93rd minute, and eventually at the end of the game you're all like, that was amazing, and then you go and lose 1-0 at Brentford or something. But the reality is that last night we absolutely battered them in every single department. 22 shots to Man City's 2, one of which was offside anyway, Haaland's header. It's just beyond comprehension that you could see a Pep Guardiola team be so dominated. And statistically, in pretty much every single way you can look at it, it's the most dominated he's ever been. And it genuinely, if Villa had come out of that 3 or 4-0 winners, you'd think, yeah, they deserved it. It was just an incredible performance. And, you were in the stadium. I mean, what was that? What was the atmosphere like?
It was special, frankly. Like, it's a strange one, because there is something about going to football games of an evening that does generate just a little bit more of a buzz. I can't quite figure it out what it is, but I have succumbed to it many a times. And a game under the floodlights does just bring a little bit of an extra spark. So you could just sense that there was a little bit more when we were down in the Holt End before the game. The 8:15 kickoff probably allowed people to not rush from work. So that extra half an hour to a traditional kickoff just meant everybody was more at ease, probably had a time for an extra beer, etc. So everybody was up for it. And you sort of approach the game without any fear. It's like, well, why can't we beat Man City? We haven't lost at Villa Park in the league for, 14 games, however long that is. And we had nothing to fear. Like, we caught them at the right time. I mean, we have to accept there was an element of luck in the time of the fixture. So them not having Rodri, Grealish, Doku, De Bruyne, they're huge players, right? If they're playing, it's a different game. So we took the opportunity that was presented to us, and we took it with both hands. And the fans from the start were bang up to it. I think we had a chance really, really early on. Luca Digne had a shot which just hit the side netting felt like within the first 5 minutes, and it just set the tone.
Yeah,
it isn't hard to create an atmosphere against Man City, is it? That's the big game you want to win. Where we are at the minute, if the atmosphere had been flat last night to begin with, there's something incredibly wrong. So when the performance started to kick in, the fans just went with it. And by the time we scored, because it was beginning to feel like this is going to be a 1-0 Man City win, where almost a bit Spurs-esque, where the media still love Spurs when they lose. It felt like this is going to be one of those games where we get all the plaudits, and then we chat this time and we've got 0 points from it. But we're all sitting here saying, oh, you know what, we're going to go on to big things. But honestly, when that goal went in, I've got cuts all over my shin. My legs are an absolute mess. It was just euphoria. And I was absolutely bricking it in the injury time. But when you watch it back, it was comfortable. The tension in the stadium is one thing, but then actually when you get out of that tension, you watch the last 5 minutes back. Like you said, they weren't bombarding our goal. No. There was one cross from a free kick in about the 85th minute, which Dougie Luiz did his utmost to dive and put into his own net. But it was just a simple catch from Martinez. He had nothing to do, and the fans were just... It genuinely felt like this wasn't a one-off. It felt like this was a big game, and everybody in the stadium is up for quite a few more big games in this season and for the next few seasons. It just feels like we've turned a huge corner, Frankie.
It really does. We've had some amazing performances under Unai Emery. His first game, the Man United 3-1, and then the Newcastle 3-0, I think was absolutely exceptional. But there was just something about that win last night that really felt like we've just done that to the treble-winning champions of Europe. And, the team with all the assets in the world, with, possibly the greatest coach who's ever coached, Unai Emery himself, doesn't have a good record against him, never beat him before last night. And it kind of feels like Emery and Aston Villa in unison have turned a corner together. Emery, I think, in the past would have tried to be a bit more pragmatic against Pep Guardiola sides. Now it feels like he takes the game to teams managed by, or higher up the table, like a City or a Liverpool. He's willing to do that more than I think he used to. And with that, he's sort of almost evolving as a manager, and Aston Villa as a club are evolving as a consequence. It's absolutely just amazing to watch. And you're exactly right. Like, it feels like it's setting us up for big games, not just, this Saturday or this season, but for the years ahead. And you see like Martinez going mad at the end, and you just think that's the kind of character we have now on the pitch at Villa. Like, someone who wants to win, someone with that, like that energy of just, I'm going to lay the smack down, as The Rock would say. It's incredible. But, like I say, I mean, you get different perspectives in the ground and from TV. But why did you think City particularly struggled to break Villa down? It felt to me like they were just never able to get through our midfield at all.
Well, it's an interesting point, because I was going to ask you the question from watching it, because I reflect on their team sheets, and yes, we've mentioned they had a few issues, but it felt like the high line, which we've discussed beforehand, which does present opposition with chances in every game. I actually felt like it did the exact opposite in this game. It felt like Man City changed the way they played, because they felt like the best way to beat Villa was to spring that offside trap, and Haaland was playing differently to how he would in every other game. So it felt like because of the way we played, we'd forced Man City to change their way. And Man City are renowned for, we have a plan A. Plan A is so good. If plan A doesn't work for 70 minutes, plan A will work in the 70 to 80 minutes. If plan A doesn't work in 80 minutes, it will work at some point. We trust our process so much. But you look at the way Man City set up, and it just felt like they didn't have a plan of how to beat us. They didn't set up with their normal. They didn't set up with any midfielders to start with. It just felt like the professor had got into Pep's head somehow. Like, the way they set up was just un-Man City-like. It felt like we'd had a little win before the game started. So I didn't know if maybe the commentators had talked about that, but it did feel like they were playing like differently because of the way we play. And I think that's a huge sign of how intimidating coming to Villa Park has become. Because there's no doubt when we play them at the Etihad later in the season, it'll be a completely different scenario. But it feels like teams now are, scared is probably the wrong word, but very respectful of coming to Villa Park. They realise that they have to do something perhaps slightly differently. And I'm not never going to be super confident going into games, but I'm super confident in the fact that if a team beats us at Villa Park now in the league, they're going to have to put in one hell of a performance.
Yeah.
And if a team does that, sometimes you have to accept that you can get beaten by another team on the day. But we have created something so like impressive that teams now are coming to Villa Park without their normal plan and a little bit uncertain of what to do. So I think we actually had a beat. The professor had got it sorted before a ball was kicked last night. We managed to influence their decision making, so we just took them out of their game plan, and he switched it around at half time by bringing Bernardo more central. But by that point, and one of the things that really impressed me was how relentless we were, Frankie. It's like you could easily see a scenario where after 45 minutes of battering them, you go in at half time. And then the chat at half time was, well, Man City aren't going to be that bad second half. That it was a sort of that was amazing, but that was probably our opportunity we've missed in that first half. Like we probably should have been 2-0 up at half time, and then you sort of cling on mentality. And it felt like the first 5 minutes of the second half, they had a bit more possession. They were growing into the game. And then I think Dougie and Kamara were sensational in that midfield, and they just grabbed hold of the game once again. And I think that after about the 55th minute onwards, we were just in complete control once again. So I actually think they didn't know how to prepare for our game.
And looking at it, it looked to me like Villa had a very, very set structure in the midfield. And I remember there was a couple of occasions watching it where I think it'd be like a Ruben Dias or an Akanji would come from the defence and push forward and look around. And they'd look in the centre and you just see like one City player stuck in between this mass of Villa players who just bunged up the middle of the park. And it felt like City just never really had an option to go to play through us. I think, and it just felt like it never quite happened for them, apart from that one occasion when Phil Foden cut inside and did manage to just get that ball through to Haaland. Brilliant save from Emi Martinez. But it just felt a bit like Villa were kind of a medium block almost, and the line was high. The midfielder were all very condensed, but like not so condensed that if it went out wide, one of them couldn't go out then and support the wide players to mark as well. And then on top of that, when City had the ball at the back, we'd be putting them under relentless pressure all the time. Even the Edison, it was like we would just Watkins would be straight on him, and then if it went out to Ruben Dias, Leon Bailey would be on him. It was just like the preparation. It was so good that it's just I just marvel at it. I mean, I keep saying it. I want to write poetry to Unai. I just do all the time. But, I mean, it's hard to pick a player because I feel like every single person was 10 out of 10, including substitutes who came on for about 50 seconds, including the ball boys, including everyone in the stands. But, I mean, who did stand out to you, would you say?
I mean, you're absolutely right. They all played exceptional. Like, I saw somebody posted so like they all gave him 10 out of 10 apart from one player who was Leon Bailey, who they gave 11 out of 10.
Yeah.
That felt to me there was the right sort of way to sum it up. I think Leon Bailey last night was the best I've ever seen him play. Ever. And I'll be honest, when I talked about it at the top of the podcast, players that I didn't think could reach that level, he would probably be the first on my list of players who I didn't think could get to that level. I thought he was a 10-minute, 15-minute world-class player, and then you miss him for half an hour. But last night, he was on one. He wanted to win that game. I think more than I've ever seen a desire in an individual ever before. He was relentless. And you always had a sense he always wants to be on the limelight, and he was always going to be up for the big games. But this last few, under the fact that he's not even starting many games, and this attitude that I think a lot of fans felt that he would have a bad attitude and he would sulk, and as soon as he's not playing, he would, cause unrest. It's completely the opposite. He's been used sparingly this season. It'd be interesting to see who's had more minutes between him and Diaby. It's probably now quite similar, but neither of them are throwing their toys out the bag. Each of them are, as soon as they get on the pitch, want to make a point, and he made one hell of a point last night. I thought Bailey was sensational, and probably the only other name I'd call out is Tielemans for very similar reasons, in that he hasn't had as much game time, but the last few weeks when Zaniolo's playing and he's not, the team just looks so out of kilter. So for me, Tielemans now has become he is part of the strongest 11 that we've got at this moment in time. And I thought, everybody last night was sensational, but Bailey, I thought, was a man possessed.
It was absolutely remarkable to witness. And I think Tielemans and Bailey, ever since that 4-1 against Alkmaar, where they were both sensational, both scored, the two of them have just gone up a level.
Yeah.
And I think it took Tielemans a little bit longer this season to get going, but Bailey, for him, it was ever since that 4-0 against Everton at Villa Park back in August, where he got a goal and an assist. And ever since then, consistently, he's been incredible. And, after the game last night, Professor and I did the post-match interview, and they said to him about Leon Bailey, and he said, they said, he played so well. And he said, it's about the consistency and it's about working harder. And you can see that he's clearly been at him constantly, like, you are a really, really talented player, but you're not consistent enough. You need to be more consistent. You need to work hard. Yeah. And he's clearly just got into him and inspired him in a way that he's producing the goods similarly every game now. But, Bournemouth, I thought he was brilliant. Yeah. But last night, I mean, there were moments where it reminded me of Diego Maradona, that picture of him surrounded by all them Netherlands players. Gvardiol probably looked at Leon Bailey and it reminded him of playing Lionel Messi for Argentina. It was probably calling him Lionel Bailey by the end of the night. It was absolutely insane performance. He'd have 4 players on him and always work a way out. Everything he did worked, and it's we've said for ages, with Bailey, like he's had 10 out of 10 games before, like the Man United 3-1, but then he'd follow it up with a 2 out of 10, a 3 out of 10, he'd go missing. But the consistency that he never had, he's shown it at last. It's just amazing to watch, and to think that you've got a player like Diaby who can just come off the bench and come in. I mean, my God. I mean, it's Jacob Ramsey coming on, Alex Moreno coming on, Zaniolo didn't come on, Matty Cash didn't come on. I mean, the squad depth at the moment is just, I'll tell you what, Webber, I'm daring to dream.
It's not just the squad depth, but you look at the starting 11 last night. I wondered if I was dreaming or if this was true, but just look at their ages. So Konsa's 26, Powell is 26, you got Dougie's 25, Kamara's 24, Tielemans is 26, Watkins 27, Bailey 26, Ramsey 22, Duran 19, Cash 26, Diaby 24. These are all just about to come into their prime, and if we can get into the Champions League, we can challenge. They have no need to leave Aston Villa. So this could be the spine of our team. Emi Martinez, for a goalkeeper, is 31, so he's relatively young as well. Yeah. So you've got a spine there of, from what we saw last night, a world-class football team that could be with us for the next 5 seasons, and they're only going to get better. So it's scary. Like, it generally is. If you're not going to get excited now, there's no point. This is the time to get excited.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm still not over the days of watching us in the Championship, struggling to how on earth has this turned around so rapidly? And another player to mention last night, I thought John McGinn was again. I keep saying this about John McGinn. I think he is an Alex Ferguson era Manchester United player. I think he's the type of player who has much more quality than people realise. Is a real fighter. Just never gives up, and is exactly what Ferguson would have had at Man United back in the day, and the type of player Man United need right now. And thank God, that they're badly run, because if they were well run, they'd look at McGinn and go, "That's a Man United player." He's absolutely, particularly at home this season. I've seen him play multiple 10 out of 10 games now. Fulham, he was brilliant. Everton, he was brilliant. Luton, and then last night. I mean, how good was McGinn as well? Yeah,
he's been brilliant throughout for almost the entire time under Emery, because he was really, really struggling under Gerrard. He lost it. I think we all felt his time at Villa was, we signed him in the Championship. It's a huge step up that he had to taking a step up from a Championship side to a relegation threatened side isn't that big, but we've taken a step up now from relegation to securely mid-table. Then you've taken another step up to European, and now you're taking another step up, and he is now taking that journey. And I felt last night was yet another captain's performance from the guy, and he just is non-stop. I think another game that you like, the game against Mostar in the at home when he got that last minute winner, he was just driving and driving and driving. He's been a force this season, and what I think is he's such a unique player in the way that he gets his cheeky little bottom out throughout the game, but the way he backs in and turns players, I don't think there's another player that does that in the league. Certainly no one does it as well as him. So the way that he gets the ball moving across his body and transitions from defence into attack with a simple looking movement, no other player is doing that. So when other midfielders come up against him, they've got no idea how to get around the immovable force, which is John McGinn's arse.
Have you heard the nickname for him today?
No, I'm not.
He's Braveheart is brave arse, apparently. I have seen that around. It is a Hadrian's wall of an arse. Nothing's getting past it.
Yeah, and he just loves it so much. You could tell that everything has just fell into place for McGinn. So he's obviously doing fantastically well for Scotland, who are beginning to qualify for tournaments as well. And that can only help him as an individual. He's got a drive that he wants to be playing for Scotland at the end of this season. And those little things that are driving you on as individuals can only help him at club form. Like, he's going to just continue this form, I feel, for the rest of the season. And he's just going to keep getting better and better, I hope. But he was sensational last night.
I totally agree with all that. And, I've been listening to a lot of wider football podcasts today because I have to hear people talk about the Villa, and I still think general wider punditry, and I say this as someone who works within the media industry, I feel like people have caught on to Villa much more than they had before. And, we've had a lot of coverage recently. Brilliant. But I still listen to these podcasts and I still think the way you talk about Villa, it's like hard. It's like, yeah, they're good, but you're not sort of expressing why Villa are good. There's no sort of depth to it. It's almost like you're sort of half watching it, but you still think Villa are just going to, they're having a nice run. It'll fall away at some point. Look, I don't know if Villa are in a title race. That's a question I've heard asked a couple of times today. But I'll ask you, Webbo, do you believe Villa are in not just competition for the Champions League, but potentially a title race as well?
No. Yeah. I have to, as much as and I think that's part of me that is just trying to calm myself down. I think you just have to, we can beat anybody. And we showed last night, if you have those performances, you will be right up at the top. But those performances we're talking about, that was the best ever Villa performances. So you don't get them every week. It was only 4 days ago that we scraped a draw away at Bournemouth, which was a sensational header by Ollie Watkins.
Unbelievable.
Didn't get the just as it deserved. It was fantastic. And that was a really valuable point. However, I do think Man City, Arsenal and Liverpool across the whole of the season will just continuously just pick up points. Look at Liverpool at the minute. It looks like Liverpool aren't playing well. 4-3 against Fulham, 2-0 last night. They're not really in top gear, but they're just accumulating win after win. And I think if you were to analyse all of those three teams, you probably would say they haven't hit top form yet, and yet they're all right up there. And whereas I think we perhaps haven't hit true top form across society in terms of back-to-back fantastic performances, you would suggest that there is a blip somewhere in this season for Aston Villa. Just naturally that would come. Whereas Liverpool, Arsenal and Man City, you would argue their best form is to come. So I don't think we're in a title race. However, on the counter to that, I don't fear Arsenal coming to Villa Park on Saturday. I think we can beat Arsenal. I just think across the course of a season, if we hopefully go deep in the conference, that will catch us out on a couple of games. Yeah, we got Brentford away coming up as well. You sort of just fear. I remember before the Spurs game, I was more confident that day of beating Tottenham than Bournemouth.
You're saying weirdly, same, yeah.
So I just think we will drop points where the likes of Liverpool, Arsenal and Man City won't. And whereas I think we could beat Arsenal at home, I think we could beat Liverpool at home, who we've got Man United at home. I think we can beat all these teams on the day. I just think across a whole season, there's still loads of games left. We will drop points where they won't.
Yeah, I still think we've got another Nottingham Forest in us somewhere.
Yeah.
And the Bournemouth game, I thought we started the Bournemouth game really well, actually. And I thought, hello, we're finally starting an away game well and not in sort of chaos mode. And then we went and just gave the ball away and they scored. And that, I think, affected the game because I think away from home, the problem is we keep conceding early. So it's always we're always climbing mountains.
Yeah.
If we can
I also think in the Bournemouth game, Frankie, the VAR disallowed goal had a double negative on us.
Absolutely, it did.
Because firstly, the goal was disallowed. So that's your first negative. And it took so long, all our momentum had gone.
Yeah.
So everybody had literally cooled down. And this is why VAR at times is farcical. So the players had time to cool down. The whole momentum we were building had stopped.
Yeah.
And if that had just been given offside straight away, I'm really confident we would have continued on top for the next 5-10 minutes of that game and we would have found a way to be ahead.
Yeah.
But these things happen in football. So we didn't deserve to win that game on the whole of it at all.
No, but you're right. I think automated offside is definitely the way forward with that. But I do think with Villa, we're a work in progress away from home. If we can just stop conceding early away and start scoring first and more like we did last season, then I think I'll really start to believe then that Villa really could be a Champions League team this season.
I'm believing that we can be right at the top, but I don't believe we can be the very, very, very top.
Yeah,
anyway, Frankie, not yet.
I feel like there's going to be a point in February or March where one of City or Liverpool go on a 10-game winning run.
Yeah.
And I'm not.
It's an interesting one, Frankie, because I look for the first time ever, we're approaching a transfer window where we don't need players.
Yeah.
But are we in as good a position that we're ever going to be to actually just go for it? And should the owners, is this the window to go and raid, I don't know, somebody from Everton who's a first teamer, somebody with Premier League experience who is at a mid-table team? Because we must be a really appealing team to come to right now.
Yeah.
Right, like we pay well. We've got all the facilities there. We are on the up. The stadium is going to get rebuilt, etc. Like the ground is going to expand. Could this be the window where we pay over the odds for 2 or 3, like an Anthony Gordon, when Newcastle paid over the odds to get Anthony Gordon?
Yeah.
And it took him a while to sell, but he's clearly a top quality player. Could this be a window where we go out and make a statement or 2 signing? And actually, this season could be the one that they go for it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Villa did pull out. Monchi, new to the job, wants to set his stall out and put a little bit of his own print on the team. I'm sure Emery has identified areas of the squad where he thinks we could be stronger. I think right back is probably the one sort of very obvious area. I could see something like that happening, and just to give 1 or 2 extra bodies in the running, so that then when we do get the inevitable injuries, we're fine. I still think if a Watkins or an Emi Martinez got injured in his spell time, I do think we're a bit more so than maybe an Arsenal or a City. We're probably a little bit on thinner ice with those kinds of players. Whereas, City, though they don't have their strongest players there, if they lose Rodri or De Bruyne, you still think, but they still have a really bloody, like Calvin Phillips isn't even coming off the bench. So, So, but look, what an incredibly exciting time to be a Villa fan. And I'm very excited going into Arsenal this weekend. Yeah. Can we beat them?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm struggling to remember when I was this excited about going to a game. So travelled from London last night, stayed overnight at my parents', travelled back to London today. And I cannot wait to get back on that train, get me to Euston Station for like 12 o'clock on Saturday, get me onto that train up to Villa Park. I cannot wait for it. I say that if you can't be excited about being a Villa fan now, you never will be. There's no point being a Villa fan if you're not excited now. This is the time. And you look at their form as well, Frankie, their away form is almost similar to ours. They've drawn with Chelsea. They got knocked out of the League Cup. They lost to Newcastle. I think they got a little bit of unnecessary negative press from their hard-fought win at Brentford. I actually felt that was quite a professional performance.
It's a very good win.
They scored late, but they were in control of that game, I felt. And then that Luton game the other night was crazy. But they're not blowing teams away from home. They're not really in control of many of these games away from home. So if you were to pick a fault with Arsenal right now, it is their away form. If their goalkeeper situation is unsettled, I would say. Raya made a few mistakes. Could they pick Ramsdale? Could they pick Raya? Felt they don't know who they're going to pick in goal is only a benefit to any opposition. Their next 3 Premier League games are really tough. They got us away, Brighton home, and then Liverpool away.
Oh, right.
This is a mini run, and within that they've got PSV, but they've already won their group, so they'll rest everybody for that game. But their next 3 games, they'll be looking at it. 9 points from that would be an amazing result. I think they're going to accept that they're going to drop points. I think if you were to challenge an Arsenal fan, I would have thought they would be taking a point from Villa Park on Saturday. But I think there's going to be some really interesting matchups, and I genuinely think it'll be a quality game of football. That after last night, if we play like last night, we'll win. We'll 100% win.
And that's the thing. Like, I think for neutrals, Aston Villa now is a must-see game. I went to watch the Tottenham game with an Arsenal fan friend of mine, and he was just loving it. It just every Villa game just seems to be so entertaining, and you never quite know what's going to happen. Arsenal. I think I've been to the Emirates this season to watch them play, and I've seen quite a lot of the games just because I think when you live down here, you seem to get to know a lot of Arsenal fans, so I take more of an interest in them than I otherwise would do. And I think what I've felt with them is that whilst they're obviously an excellent team, brilliant players, Declan Rice, what a signing, there is still something not quite clicking at full pelt yet, even though they're top of the league and obviously doing very well. I do wonder if they would look at Luton away and Villa away and think, kind of like how we looked at Spurs and Bournemouth, maybe think I'd rather Villa than Luton, weirdly.
Maybe.
But I think if Villa have a similar shape to what we had against City, compact in the middle, but then once that ball gets out to Saka and Martinelli, who just drag you wide all game, and we really struggled with Saka and Ben White's overlapping runs and underlapping runs last season. If we can double up on those two and trap that run with Ben White, but also maybe even just man mark Odegaard. As soon as they're in possession, just get on him and don't let him play. Because then if you can start to disrupt them, all right, Declan Rice could get the ball a bit deeper and maybe try and drive forward, but that's probably not their ideal situation. So, and then on top of that, if they're inverted fullback, they don't, they're at left back this season. They're not looking very good. Julian Timber was signed to go there, got injured. Zinchenko's struggling, gave the ball away for the Wolves goal the other day. And on top of that, Kivior didn't play so well against Luton as well. So I feel like that area of the pitch, exactly where Leon Bailey is, Moussa Diaby, that's, again, probably the area where I think we can really do a lot of damage, particularly if their fullback comes into the centre of the pitch and there's suddenly space there, get the ball quickly, whip it forward and just go quick on the transition. So I'm really excited for it. I think it'll be a really top-notch game. And, even whatever happens, if Villa, if this is the day the winning run ends, I still feel, though, with this Villa team that I still feel like we'll bounce back.
Well, that's the thing. That's something that Emery has done incredibly well, is that we haven't had a bad run of form. We've had a couple of odd games, but we very rare. I don't know if we've had back-to-back. We certainly haven't had it this season. But every time we've had a setback, we've just bounced back. And it's almost like the wins don't, if that felt slightly different last night, but the wins aren't that euphoric and the defeats aren't that terrible. You just keep marching forward. And we've got, now that we've won one of these 2 games this week, this was looking like a potentially really, really sticky period. Still really hard games. But the next 2 home games in the league after this are Burnley and Sheffield United. So you will be odds on to win both of those games. So this is now, everything about it is a free hit. You've got your 3 points against Man City. So nobody probably in their wildest dreams expected 6 points from these 2 games. So you've got 3 points. You can hurt Arsenal, like you just said there. One thing that would be interesting is, we've said it on this chat, Frankie, is that was our best Villa performance. Would you change the starting 11 for Arsenal?
I'm sort of vaguely wondering if, because we've had so many games in a row, Lechia Warsaw, 3 days later, Bournemouth, 3 days later, we've ended up with City, and 3 days later, again, Arsenal. That's such a vast number of games in short time that I do wonder if he might mix it up again just to manage the minutes, essentially. And if you don't want to drop Bailey after his performance of the night. I doubt he'll drop Bailey, but at the same time, if Diaby started over him, I also wouldn't be that surprised by that.
Yeah. I think we're quite lucky in that we're pretty much guaranteed to win the group in the conference.
Yeah.
So famous last words, obviously. So I would imagine the likes of Watkins, McGinn, Martinez probably won't even travel to Bosnia. So, and the euphoria from that game, I think that will get them through another game. So there is a potential to give 5 or 6 of them literally 2-3 days off next week.
Yeah.
So the only change I would be interested to make would be getting Carlos out, who I thought handled Haaland exceptionally last night.
Brilliant.
But I would still prefer personally to have Cash at right back and Konza as a centre back. I think that is our strongest back four. Mm-hmm. Currently, obviously, I think Moreno will hopefully reach his heights when he gets back to full fit. But I think right now our best back four is Digne, Pau, Konza, and Cash.
Yeah,
and I just feel Martinelli and that left side up against Cash is a better match than Konza. That would be the only area I expect I could see a change. I think after the amazing performance, I think he'll be inclined to keep the rest of it the same. In truth, he'll probably keep the whole 11 the same, is where my gut feel is at the moment.
That's a good point, actually, because, you think last night with City, their wingers didn't have pace. No. Foden and Bernardo Silva and then Rico Lewis, I think, they're not really players that can run at you. So having Konsa there at right back was probably perfect, to be honest. Maybe he brings in Moreno and Cash because they're both faster. Yeah. And if they get, if one of Martinelli or Saka does get in behind, at least you got somebody who can probably just get back. And at the same time with Carlos as well, because of his injury problems in recent years, asking him to do 390s in a row in the space of 5 days probably is quite a lot. So I think you might be right about that, actually. Cash on the right to deal with the pace of Martinelli and then just manage Carlos's minutes. I'd love Carlos to play every game, of course, but Emery's, there's a reason he's won so many trophies in Europe because he's capable of managing minutes, basically. So, yeah, I think probably the back line is where you might see some changes.
Yeah, potentially. But it's going to be a fun game, Frankie. It's going to be a fun one.
Can't wait. Cannot wait. Webbo, you're chair of the London Lions. I ask you this every time I'm part of the London Lions as well. What a brilliant group. Get down the Yak and Elephant and Castle, I tell you. But Webbo, for those listening, how can you get involved with the London Lions?
Yeah, so I'm the chairman of the football club that play for the London Lions. There's various different chair people from the North, South, East and South London Lions. So you can reach out to Frankie, or you can find London Lions on all social media platforms. As Frankie alluded to, we have a pub in Elephant and Castle, which show all Villa games, whether they're on their TV or not. So it's a great hub to meet fellow Villa fans if you're in London. And then there's quite a few of us that go up to the games as well. So if you need a travel companion on either the Chiltern Rail or the Avanti up from London to Birmingham one game, then reach out. There's always one of us on the trains going up at least.
You're always going to need a travel companion because those trains get delayed so much. Thank you, Webber, for joining us. But before we go, there was some sad news in the world of Aston Villa today. The All Villa No Filler podcast wishes to send its respects to the family and friends of the poet Benjamin Zephaniah, who has passed away. I think the House of E writer James Rushton put it best that he was a son of Birmingham, but a gift to the world. Professor Zephaniah was from the Aston area and a lifelong Villa fan. I strongly recommend watching his interview with the in-house club channel about his life as a Villa fan and his ode to the club as well. Also, check out the great man's poetry, of course. Rest in peace, Benjamin. A Holt ender in the sky, always with us.